to order. It is 7:05 p.m. Today is April 23rd, 2020. We are having a remote Zoom meeting. I'll start with a roll call. Marty, wave your hand. There's Marty. Other planning board members want to sign in? Susan,
Roger's here.
Roger's here.
Susan?
Susan's here. I'm Rich Ganong. Tad Redway is here. We do have a quorum.
Yep,
So
right.
we'll start off with approval of the agenda. On the agenda tonight, we have the approval of minutes from April 9th, 2020. We have two public hearings, one for Terrapin Landscapes and one for Smart Transportation. We then go into pending applications. We have an application from BDF Holdings, a major subdivision application. Terrapin Landscape has a plenary site plan application. 35 DMR Drive is a plenary site plan review, determination of completeness. Smart Transportation is a major conditional use application, determination of completeness. Old Logging Road Timber Harvest, major conditional use application, determination of completeness. And the last application, the last pending application is Rontu's Run Dog Daycare, major conditional use application, a determination of completeness. We then have a new application, Wears Buick GMC service expansion.
No, they're not on. Mr.
They're not
Chairman.
on. Okay,
No.
they showed up.
No,
I thought
they
maybe.
did not submit. They didn't submit.
Okay.
I
Wears Motors-
haven't gotten anything.
Yep, not a problem. Wears Motors is not on the agenda. They have not submitted an application. Then we will have other business, and then we'll all stop and go home. Well, we'll stop. Most of us are probably already home.
I
So-
move to approve the agenda.
Second?
Marty seconded. I saw Marty waving. Sorry, he beat you to it, Susan.
That's okay.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded for the approval of the minutes on April 9th, 2020. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous. Approval of minutes for April 9th. I'm hoping you all had a chance to look through the minutes.
Mhm.
So we need a motion to accept those minutes and then move forward.
I move that we accept the minutes as written.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yep. It is unanimous. We will move on. Public hearings. The first public hearing is Terrapin Landscape. Is he here?
I'm not seeing him. I think he was on earlier. I'm texting him to see if he's available.
There's Paul Gadboy.
I can represent him anyway.
Okay. Is there anybody from the public that has any questions for Mr. Doe concerning Terrapin Landscape? Okay, hearing none, I will close that public hearing and we will move on to Smart Transportation. Again, anybody from the public that has questions concerning Smart Transportation and the operation that they plan on running down on Route 1. Hearing none, we will move on. I will close the public hearings. And we will move into pending applications. The first pending application we have is BDF Holdings. It's a major subdivision, a proposal to subdivide a 31.5 acre parcel, tax map 4 lot 23 at 715 Alfred Road in the AR district into 4 lots. subdivide the existing 5,000 square foot building on proposed Lot 2 into an additional 4 units and make improvements to the existing Heavy Hammer Lane to bring it into conformance with the town commercial driveway standards. BDF Holding is the owner and applicant. We had the public hearing on this last week. Does the board have any questions for Ben? Hearing none, we will move on. All I have to do is find that on a sheet of paper.
Through the chair,
Yes,
we did receive the letter from the fire chief, which I believe was the one thing that was outstanding that the board had asked for, and the fire chief has submitted the letter, and he is fine with the application. He has adequate fire suppression capabilities there, and I believe that was sent to you last week. Mr. Fitzpatrick has met all those standards. The only other issue is going to be a couple of conditions, and those conditions would be, of course, the agreement that at the time that we get more than 15 parking spaces, a need for that, then that road, that lane's got to be paved. And I believe Ben has agreed to that. And the other was that the stormwater drainage for lots 3 and 4 are the responsibility of whoever develops 3 and 4 and not of the applicant. And we also need a bond or a performance standard for the improvements to the road. And we didn't get a cost estimate on that per se. So staff could recommend 25,000 or 10,000. It's up to the board. It's not much of an. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, what do you think it's going to cost to do that work? Do we have a cost estimate of anything?
No, we don't. It's almost there right now, so I think 10,000 would probably do it. Right. He's got to extend the road and put in the hammerhead, and then such time that that we get the requirement for when he actually has tenants or he has additional buyers who want to do something, then the applicant is to basically pave that road.
Do we normally charge a percentage, Tad?
We usually charge the whole thing.
Okay,
But
so should we get an estimate?
Normally we get some kind of a cost estimate of what it's going to be. In this case.
So why don't we request one and base it on that, and that it's, conditional on getting that and getting the bond.
Okay, but you have the motion for BDF Holdings, correct? Have you read it, Susan?
Yes, I have, as a matter of fact.
So we can add that as number 8 as a condition for the findings of fact.
Well, I think
Yeah, Tad.
Hey guys, just so you know, I'm not hearing everything that's going on. My computer keeps kicking me off. I'm trying to keep up, but I really don't know what's happening right now. I can't hear anything.
Well, right now, we're simply discussing the cost estimate on doing the road and finishing the project so that we know how much
Okay,
is available for a bond.
I did hear that part. It was 7.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. It is creating a problem, isn't it?
He can call in on his phone. Would that be
Yeah.
better?
or he can text.
Yeah, I could do that. It's $17,000 is what it's going to cost to do the upgrade.
Okay. Yeah, I had it at 25. So we could make it 18, and that would be fine with me.
Okay.
Okay,
I think that's, if that's what we do, that's what we should do.
round it up. You usually ask for 10% more.
Okay, that's fine.
And that will be fine. We'll just make the change to condition number 3 for the performance assurance in the amount of $18,000 as
Okay.
opposed to the 25 that is in there.
Right, okay, sounds good. By the way, Mike Corsi is trying to get in. Mr. Chairman, I think you have to let him in. He's trying to get back in, and I think you're the gatekeeper here.
He's not on the list of people that are trying to get in. I've let, there he is.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, let's see if he comes in this time.
Okay, there's Ricky.
Yeah, he was there a minute ago. He's showing up under, it must be Stacy Corsi, it must be his wife.
Yes, that's what it is.
I gave him permission and then he went away.
He's there. I see him.
Okay. Sven,
Okay, yep, I see him now.
okay. So, Mr. Chairman, rather than reading the entire findings of fact, I had proposed that we did what Jamie Lowry had recommended before, that we forego all that. I'll just supply it to the applicant. We go right to the actual motion for approval.
Right. So, well, we have to, I need a motion to forego the reading of the findings of fact from someone on the planning board. And then we'll vote on that.
Okay.
I make a motion, we forego the reading of the findings of facts.
Okay, is there a second?
I second that.
Motion's been made and seconded to forego the reading of the findings of fact. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. Now we need a motion to approve the minor subdivision.
I move that we approve the minor subdivision as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded to approve the minor subdivision as presented with the findings of fact enclosed. Any discussion? Those in
Through
favor?
the chair,
Yes, yes, Dad.
a point of order, or perhaps we should read those conditions, just so the applicant knows there are conditions to this, so he isn't surprised.
Those are all part of the findings of fact. Okay,
Okay,
that,
all right.
well,
No,
yeah,
fine.
because
Okay,
it makes no sense to waive, to forego the reading of the findings of fact and then have to read the conditions. Where did he
Okay.
go? We keep losing poor Ben. Paul. Paul, unmute yourself.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
I think he's trying to call me now, so he's gone, but
Okay,
I'm listening. I don't think Ben's gonna have any issues with that $18,000 bond. And so I'll call him up as soon as we're here over this evening.
well, real quickly, it's just the subdivision has to be recorded with the registry within 90 days, typical. No
Yep.
changes can be made without the planning board's approval. It's a $18,000 performance assurance. No construction can, until all of the soil control measures have been installed. Lots 3 and 4 are individually responsible for the stormwater management. The applicant needs to complete all of the approved approved improvements no later than April 23rd, 2022. No later than April 23rd, 2022.
Yeah. Now I can't hear you, Richard.
Oh, okay, no, I'm sorry. It's April 23rd, 2022.
Yep.
And then the applicant's responsible for upgrading Heavy Hammer Lane to the industrial commercial street standards
When he reaches more than 15 spaces?
when it reaches more than 15
Right.
spaces. Yes, thank you. Those are the conditions. It's been moved and seconded by the planning board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous.
All right, thank you very much. I'll call Ben up.
Okay, and Tad can
Okay.
Tad will get you a copy of the entire findings of fact.
Yeah, and I need, if I can get 2 paper signed copies to bring to the registry, that would be awesome.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. We're going to try to see if DocuSign can do that for us.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. Thank
We-
you.
Well, I know we can get the
Okay.
findings of fact signed. Whether we can get any of the Mylars signed or not remains to be seen. I have,
Well, we could probably get the
I should know tomorrow morning about the Mylars. I have a call into DocuSign. The guy's going to call me back sometime before noontime.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. The next item, Terrapin Landscape, plenary site plan application, a proposal to construct a 40,280 square foot gravel parking lot for the storage of equipment, trucks, mulch, loam, and other earth materials associated with a landscaping design and installation business located at 1544 Portland Road, tax map 29, lot 19 in the DB1 and DB2 districts. Corsi Holdings is the owner and applicant. I just do that. You know, I gotta quit putting stuff where it belongs because I can't find it. Where did Paul go?
This isn't Paul's, this is
Steve
Steve's.
goes.
Oh, okay.
All up the meeting.
He decided since he didn't give us anything for Weir's Motors, he wasn't gonna hang around.
Yeah.
I don't blame him. Okay, does the board have any questions for Mr. Corsi on Terrapin? I think the only real issue that may develop is the buffering screening on the property to the north.
Yep.
Yeah, on the property to the north. I don't think we can waive those standards. And
Mr. Chairman, if I
yes,
may. The planning board asked at the last meeting whether they had 2 concerns, and that those concerns were justification for some sort of references for where the DB measurements or the DB performance of the machinery back there, what those DBs were going to be and what they were going to be at the property line. And also the other question was that there was some concerns that since the abutting property had in fact been clear cut, that whether or not there was adequate dinner's arrived, adequate buffering to meet the standard for parking lot buffering. And so the applicant has provided information on the DB measurements and DB production by the equipment, and he has proposed that that if there is an insufficient buffering when they do the actual construction, they're prepared to put in a fence or coniferous buffering along that line so it achieves the goals of the ordinance.
okay, well, that will be subject to your review.
That's subject to my review.
Okay. Any questions from the planning board? Hearing none, we can move right along. In this case, it's the same as before. We're looking for a motion to forego the reading of the planner's findings of fact. And there were 6 of them so that everybody knows what they are very quickly. It's a $63,000 surety bond prior to the commencement of site work. Soil erosion devices shall be installed prior to the commencement of site work. No site work shall be shut down for the winter until all required soil stabilization mechanisms are in place. No cut buffers along the north and south boundaries we've just discussed with the town planner. In the event of a lack of existing vegetation, again, just had that discussion, that will be subject to the town planner's satisfaction. No certificate of occupancy will be issued by the codes enforcement until everything has been done according to the plan. And the permit expires on April 23rd, 2022, and all approved work must be done by that date.
Also the issue of a bond, Mr. Chairman?
I did, $63,000. That's the very first condition. So if we could get a motion to forego the reading of the findings of fact.
I move
Make a
that we
motion.
forego the reading. I'm sorry, Tad?
Nope, that was Roger.
That was me.
You and Roger were both doing
Oh,
it.
sorry. Go ahead, Roger.
Go
Go,
ahead,
Roger.
Susan. All right, I make a motion, we forego reading the findings of facts.
And I second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to forego the readings of the finding of fact. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It is unanimous. Now we need a motion to approve the plenary site plan. You do this one, Susan.
Okay. I move that we approve this plenary site plan.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the plenary site plan. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
You in favor, Marty? How about you, Roger?
Yeah, I'm in.
Marty, you in favor? Yep, Marty's in favor.
Marty's waving.
It is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will get the findings of fact signed, hopefully within the next day or two. The findings of fact we can send out through DocuSign and get those signed. The question is whether or not we can get a Mylar signed. Unless Steve knows how to get Mylars electronically filed.
I've heard that I think in other towns that as long as, I think that the board may be able to authorize the planner to do it. There's other methods out there. I'm just not clear on what it is yet. I think Kennebunk's trying to go through that as well.
Okay,
Well, if you hear anything, will you let us know?
Yeah, I'll let Tad know because I know other towns are working on that same issue.
excellent.
So,
I'd appreciate that
right.
because it's
Yep.
something about trying to create a PDF out of a 2x4 Mylar. Just seems like it might be a little difficult. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Hey, I have one more question. What are my next steps to actually getting going on construction there?
You've got to.
Once
You have to get some money over to Tad or some kind of a surety bond. And then you need to make sure that all of the erosion stuff is in place. You're ready to start. If you just need to touch base with Tad, make sure that he is satisfied with the erosion controls, make sure that he has your surety bond. And then I believe that takes care of everything at this point. Am I correct, Tad?
Correct.
So I just
okay,
think,
so I should just touch base with you on Monday, Dad. You're not on Fridays, right? So.
No, I'm on Friday.
Oh, you are?
I'm
Okay.
always there.
Okay. Should I call the office tomorrow?
Call me tomorrow morning, or Monday. Monday Monday I'm in. I don't have any meetings Monday, so I'm actually going to be in the office.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, you bet.
okay, the next one is 35 DMR Drive. Plenary site plan review determination of completeness. A proposal to construct a 4,251 square foot metal building complementing an existing 3,440 square foot commercial building on a 2.83 acre site located at 35 DMR Drive, tax map 1, lot 1D in the BI district. Gary Martin is the owner applicant and Amy McNally Esquire is the applicant's agent. Where'd Amy go? Oh, she
I'm
moved.
still here.
Well, it's really funny because somebody goes off and everybody changes place on the screen. Amy, I think we have a problem.
What's, are you talking about the right of way?
I am talking about the right of way. You need to have a right of way. You can't get
Well,
an
and I
easement.
think I think I'd like to speak to that if I may. I reviewed the staff notes that Tad sent over earlier today. And I think that, I guess I just want to speak to both the definition of right of way, which is highlighted in the staff notes, and then also private way, which is also mentioned in the notes. And so the right of way just says that the access point shouldn't be counted as as part of the parcel. So that's when we adjusted the traveled way in the lot, we adjusted the setback to meet it so that it's from the traveled way as opposed to the end of the lot line. And I think that in the notes, in Tad's notes, he indicates that a private way providing legal access must be contained within the confines of the designated right of way. And I think that we would be creating a new right of way or a wider right of way essentially that then the setback would measure for. We're not changing the existing right of way. We're just simply making it bigger, making it wider. And we wouldn't be counting it as part of his lot for the purposes of setback. And so I think that I might be reinterpret the ordinance a little differently, where the only limitation in the ordinance is that for setback purposes, the right of way cannot be included in Mr. Martin's parcel. So I guess I just would like to kind of open up a little bit of a conversation about that. Because I think an easement would solve this issue and also meet the town's definition of both a right-of-way and a private way. And it wouldn't have to be a non-conforming private way, because a private way just says a privately owned road within a 50-foot right-of-way constructed to standards specified in the street design and construction ordinance. So we would just be widening this or widening the 50-foot right-of-way to go on to Mr. Martin's property. Right now it exists on Arundel Storage's property. So it's all privately owned. We would just be, acknowledging that it runs on Mr. Martin's property by granting this traveled way portion. So I don't know, I guess I wanted to kind of comment on that. Again, I just received this today, so I was really kind of mulling over the differences in the definitions, but hoping that it can be solved with Mr. Martin granting the easement for the purposes of access, as opposed to changing the kind of delineation of what DMR Drive is, which I don't think we need to do.
Well, my issue with the entire thing is the fact that DMR Drive is not, the road was not built within the right of way. The road is actually on somebody else's property. You can't do that.
My client, right. Yeah.
So that whole issue needs to be resolved. You could resolve it by making a private way and putting the private way in, but I don't think you can solve it with an easement.
Well, I think the easement creates the traveled way, which is a right of way under the ordinance. So essentially he'd be granting a right of way, which acts for access and frontage, and the only frontage would be on his lot. And I think the purposes of the definition of the right of way cited in the staff notes is really just to memorialize that lot boundaries run from right of ways, and not necessarily that they can't be on private property. In fact, this right of way is on private property. It's on Arundel Storage's property. So I think access can be granted. I think the easement from our client would be just say, we own this private property and we're granting access to the other abutters the same way Arundel Storage has done for the 50-foot access then the traveled way was not constructed on, unfortunately. And again, this predates, from my understanding, predates my client's acquisition of this property. And so now the suggestion is he needs to, relinquish ownership of a portion of his property, which I don't think is necessarily under the ordinance to meet the definition of both a right of way and keep it consistently as a conforming private way, as opposed to a non-conforming private way or a commercial driveway.
But I don't believe that an easement exists for Arundel storage.
Well, there is, each of the abutters, from my understanding, have an easement because Arundel Storage owns the property under, and then each of the abutters have access via an easement that is recorded. And I could probably pull it up. So Arundel Storage owns the land underneath, and then everyone else has the access by way of an easement. And so essentially, by granting an additional easement, Mr. Martin would be essentially widening that access, which pre-exists over private property already.
Ted, comments?
Rich, is this working?
Marty, that works.
Oh, it does.
It does.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. But also DM&R Road looks like it goes all the way through from Old Limerick Road to Old Post Road. If you look at the maps and everything else, but there is also along the way, 2 different names for that road. One's DMR Drive and one's DMR Road under the tax maps of looking at streets in Arundel.
So I'm confused. So who owns the property under the road? And if DMR is the owner, do they need an easement from another property owner in order to make the road legal?
No. So Arundel Storage owns the land. So the lot, Arundel Storage's lot, technically, and my client's lot abut each other. There is a right of way over Arundel Storage's lot for access to the other abutters and for my client's lot. And the issue is that the actual traveled way, which was intended to go on that easement, the original one, has encroached over time into my client's lot. And this, I think, again, predates his acquisition of the property and has only
So
come to
your
light.
client doesn't need anything from the other property owners?
He does not, no.
So he doesn't need an easement from anyone in order to make this right-of-way kosher, so to speak?
That's correct. This just came to light during our planning, and when we submitted the plan, the traveled way is apparently slightly over my client's actual property line. But no, he doesn't need anything else it's not going to affect his access. He has access. If anything, his property is burdened by this, and it would be his kind of issue to raise. Obviously he hasn't, but that's really, he doesn't need any additional access to do this project or anything like that.
Okay, so Rich, that's a little different than I think I was thinking. I was thinking that DMR needed an easement from the abutter in order to make the road, and that an easement wasn't sufficient, that he either had to own the property or, so it's actually DMR owns the property with the right of way, and they don't really need anything from anybody else. Is that right?
No.
That's correct.
Dad, take it away.
This is, I would disagree with Amy on this in terms of the way that the town does interpret, and the way we've gone to ZBA and actually been upheld, is that the right of way is different than an easement in that it is a separate strip of land that is separate from the properties that are abutting it, because we do not have setbacks from easements. We have it from property lines. So all of the lot setbacks that we have in the town would not be valid if all right-of-ways were simply easements. However, in this particular situation, we've got two choices, and this has more of an effect. This has less of an effect on obviously not on DMR, excuse me, on Arundel Storage, and really in a way not on the applicant, because they both have access to Route 1. They meet their lot frontage access onto a private way that's within a right of way. The only people, and we also have that same situation down on Stumptown, where they also have access and of lot frontage onto Old Post Road. The only ones that are actually potentially impacted is the two interior lots that don't have legal frontage onto a private way that's within a right of way. This obviously happened long before probably this definition ever came up in the zoning ordinance. And we can banter back and forth, but the simple fact is that this condition exists and it's got to be fixed one way or the other. One way is to require that everybody give up their land and create a private right of way as it's defined in the town, which basically people have to essentially convey land for this right of way all the way down. The other one is to basically accept that the proposed easement, that the DMR drive is non-conforming private way, and that actually trying to make it conform to the current interpretation of what a right of way is would just be a bloody shambles. It'd be a real problem. And so it's up to the board, because technically rights of way need to be separate strips of land that are separate from the abutting properties, and the private way must be in it. This predates that, and frankly speaking, an easement in this situation does solve the problem of the encroachment, and the setback from that easement would actually meet the spirit of the setback from the road that you're required to have.
So I have a question. So who would be conveying and who would be receiving the conveyance?
Well, it's really it's a mess. What would happen would be John, if John's the owner, or if he becomes the owner of the abutting property on 1 Ave, he would have to convey that strip that this is on to an entity. It could be the association of all the owners there, and that would have to go on all the way down through this development. From what I could see in the research that I did last week was that there's a subdivision here that was done in which a road was never actually installed. It was just basically a driveway that lots were sold from over a period of time, and they were granted an easement. So everybody would have to convey something, and I think it would be it might be quite a mess to do that.
So the easiest thing to do would be to make it a non-conforming private way.
Basically,
So
it already is a non-conforming private way by the
right,
current.
but just codify that, bless it, so to speak, if we can.
But I'm not sure that we can. I don't think there's anything in the street design ordinance that addresses a non-conforming private way.
Okay, I don't know. Amy, it's back in your court.
Wait a minute,
Well-
I have a question, please.
Sure.
Yeah, Marty.
I'll let Marty ask.
Question is that this is supposed to have been a warranty deed, and it did show under the land survey, there is a 50-foot right-of-way through there.
That's correct. There is a right-of-way. Right-of-way does exist. What happened for over time, from what I can tell, is that the actual road was not constructed in the parameters of that delineated 50 feet. It encroaches in my client's property by, not a whole lot, and only my client's property as the road turns, as opposed to go straight. If you,
Yeah,
it's
shifted,
delineated.
it shifted.
Correct.
It has-
Correct.
it
Yep.
has shifted over the usage of everything else. But the
Correct.
road originally was created so that DMR yachts could turn around and bring their bigger boats out onto Route 1 to bring them down to Wells to float them. That's why that was there, because they couldn't enter and off Old Post Road and make the curve at the end of a swing there at the time.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yes.
Where does that leave us, everybody?
Huh?
I'm of the opinion that this was a right of way when the plans were granted. For whatever reason, this road was not built in the center of the right of way the way it was supposed to be. And I don't think that we can continue to bless mistakes, because we're faced with this problem because years back, somebody else went, oh, we'll bless the mistake that they made and it will continue on. We have all kinds of things in the town of Arundel where people have just looked the other way and allowed things to go on. And I, for one, don't think that we should continue to follow that practice. If this is a problem, you cannot take a right of way and turn it into an easement. Not under our ordinance. Under our ordinance, a right of way is different. And I think that we need to maintain that standard and say, Amy's client is going to have to talk to whoever put that road in there, or create a private road. But I don't believe that granting an easement is the appropriate solution.
Well, I think if you could, my client could also deed the portion of the right of way to make it wider. I mean, if that language, I mean, it would serve the same purpose. And I think it's going to be my client deeding one or both to either fee. In Tad's notes, he suggests deeding fee simple of the portion that encroaches on his property to the abutter for the purposes of creating that complete right of way, or access way. Or I think it could be for all access purposes under the definition of right of way. It's an area or strip of land described in a recorded deed and dedicated to the purpose of providing legal access and lot frontage. So, I mean, I think he could grant that legal interest in what's encroaching on his property, one way or the other. I think what Tad was suggesting in the alternative would be granting fee simple, which is essentially relinquishing that small sliver of the portion of the property that the road encroaches on. But I think it serves the same purpose at the end, and I think it can fall within the definition of right of way.
So I have a question. So does it change if your client deeds enough, land to make this work to the abutter, then does that abutter, or does control of that right of way fall to both your client and the abutter and somehow freeze out everybody else who's on the road? Or would it be better, Tad, to have a road agreement? If this small portion of land is given up to make this right of way work, would it be better for everyone concerned using that road to have a road agreement as opposed to deeding it to the abutter? Am I making sense? I think maybe.
No, you are making sense. It's just if you continue down along that same line, what you would have to also do is then the question is, who else is encroaching? Who owns that land? Because this right-of-way goes over Lot 1F, which is Arundel Storage, and then it goes to another property. And it's sort of like a domino effect down there. If you're going to, if Mr. Martin were to convey, that necessarily would say that the other property owners along there should also convey any kind of right-of-way. So that becomes a true right-of-way that's owned by an association,
right,
or and that's where things start getting messy. We're trying to clean up a whole thing, because Mr. Martin can fix the problem in front of him by just deeding that away. But the question is, what about the rest of the road?
Well, what's the cleanest thing for the town of Arundel? Even though it's messy, is that the cleanest way to do it, is to create a communal road that everybody shares in and has responsibility for?
That's the best. My experience is we have a lot of problems with these kind of roads, and from a standpoint of bank financing, where when they find that there's a non-conforming situation where a lot doesn't have frontage on a legally created right-of-way or private way that's been approved by the town, they pull out. And
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. No one else is protected except the abutter and the gifter, or the one who's making the gift, or everybody else is sort of maybe out in the cold, depending upon what happens down the road. That I was just trying to figure out what's best for everybody and makes it and puts it to bed once and for all.
I haven't read all the deeds, and perhaps Amy has. I'm sure that everybody's got a right to travel over this easement.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, that's my understanding too. The issue is it would be tough to take those rights away from anybody there if they already have this easement written into their deed. It's basically codifying this easement as a right of way, but that would involve people conveying land that they currently have in their on their property descriptions.
But there's protection for them and self-interest in doing that down the road, because it precludes or it stops any questions by any financial institution about, legitimate access.
Right.
Tad, can I just ask what makes it from your point of view, I just want to clarify, what makes it a non-conforming private way under the ordinance?
Because the lot frontage requirement requires you to have it on have lot frontage on a public street or a private way that's been legally approved by the town. That's where the real problem is. That's where we've had problems, where we've had private ways that weren't approved by the town, weren't within a right of way, and people have gone for financing and had it yanked. During closing, or an appraisal company comes by and they raise it as a red flag at closing, and then everything stops.
Well, I would remind the planning board that we just had that issue with a spot here in the town of Arundel where they didn't build the building in the correct place, and at closing the whole thing fell apart.
Right. They didn't make their setback.
Yeah.
So they had to move the right of way.
Well, and we don't have, we can, we work around that issue with our application, but I guess, it's the town's position that the private way must be private. I mean, it is privately owned. Arundel Storage owns it, and there's 50 foot of access. That's what I'm reading. Is it the town's position that it needs to be like a separate entity that owns it, like a road association?
It could be it could be owned by any number of people. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it is not owned by, it is a separate parcel, if you will, from the parcels that surround it. And that's the only way that we can do setbacks.
But Tad, the thing is, the town of Arundel has recognized it because they've turned around and have it listed 2 times under roads in the town of Arundel. It's DMR Road and DMR Drive. And also 2 along that way, there's already easements there for water and everything else. So, I mean, and there are also 3, 4 other people or properties that are located down there. But the road also showed that when I looked today, after I had talked to you, that it shows that DMR Road goes through Portland Road, all the way over to Old Post Road.
Yes. Although what we also have, the big question is who put this cul-de-sac in? I mean, because originally it went through and then somehow, somewhere along the line, a cul-de-sac was created for some reason, and the through road was abandoned. And I don't have any, very honestly, I don't have any records of this stuff. I have no idea how these things happen, aside from any kind of going through the records at the registry, or aside from going through minutes of planning board meetings, which has so far proven to be fruitless. I don't know how that happened. Maybe just the property owners decided to do it, and that's what they did. I don't see any evidence that the planning board approved any of these things. And I don't know when they were done. And I agree with you, Marty, because the original developer of that area told me it went through, and then he stopped it after the fire. I think you remember that too.
Well, but we're dealing with the conditions as they exist on the ground today. And my feeling, given what I've been listening to, would be to try to find a solution that puts the question of the road to bed permanently. And so maybe Amy can find out who would be impacted by, it sounds like everybody who's on the road there's going to be a give and take from everybody, and try to get a road agreement so that this question never comes up again. And everybody gives a little bit, we codify it, it's conforming, and it's done. Instead of having somebody try to buy a house on that road and have the bank, come and say they've had it appraised and surveyed, and for various reasons, they can't finance it. So my feeling would be to put it to bed once and for all and figure out who has to give what, write a simple road agreement and call it a day.
How much land are we talking about?
I mean, it's a very small, if you look at the plans in the application, it's a very small encroachment. So it's essentially a straight 50-foot easement, and the road ends up not going so straight into my client's parcel.
So how much goes into your client's parcel, Amy?
Not very much. I mean,
Is it 10 feet? Is it 5 feet? Is it 3 feet? Or
I would say it's probably around 10 feet based on maybe less based on the plan. It's not, let's see. It's probably about 10 to 15 feet, I would say, based on the scale and my quick look at the plan at the widest. So obviously it curves like this, and at the widest point of the curve over, it's about that. So it's not long, not much. And I did want to go back to the staff notes. There were two options proposed by TAD, and one was the applicant convey a proposed easement and fee to the DMR drive, which in this case I think would be the abutter Arundel storage, which would just make that that easement portion wider and consistent, or accept we had forwarded an easement proposal to the town, but my understanding is that the town's position is then it would make a non-conforming private way. So I don't know if those two options are still on the table based on the staff notes.
Those two options are basically up to the planning board to decide which one they want to pursue. Option two is basically kick the can down the road again. Still kick the can down the road, and option one is try to solve the problem, but that has implications for the abutter over at Arundel Storage. If they were to relinquish that, they'd be relinquishing about 50 feet of their property they currently have right now, because that right of way actually extends from their current property line 50 feet inward to the north. And so they'd be losing 50 feet by 200 and some odd feet. So that's a good chunk of land that they would be losing from their area. And then their setbacks to their buildings would be taken from that right of way. Now, I think they survive, but they lose some land. And the question is, you'd have to get people to want to remedy this problem. And the two property owners that we're talking about right now have access already on Route 1. They don't need legal access on this road. So I'm not, it would have to be something that the whole group would want to take care of, so that in the future there would be no blemish on this road or their access to that road. And frankly speaking, the butter to the north doesn't even have access onto this road.
Right. It really only is impacting my client at this point.
Well, it's going to impact the interior lots down below. There's
Yeah.
2 interior lots there that won't have legal frontage on a conforming private way. So that's really where the impact is. Your client can deed this land in fee or make it an easement and relieve himself of the problem. I'm not sure. The question of the board is, does this one individual have the responsibility of fixing a community problem?
Right. I think that's a fair question. And
Well, I think you can, if that is simplest for your client, he or you or whoever else is on the road can understand that he can either fix it and be done with it himself and be damned with everybody else on the road, or if everybody else has self-interest in coming together and doing something communally that benefits everybody that's on the road, although you said 2 lots already have access to Route 1 and don't, it doesn't matter if they have access to this road. You know,
Right,
I don't know what, does your client have exposure if they do what's best for them and leave everybody sort of out in the cold? And or will others be able to come back at your client and say, you knew this was going to be the case and now we're frozen out and we can't sell our houses? And
yeah, I mean,
I'm just asking, you know.
No, my client is very clear that he does not want to cause any more trouble for anybody anywhere. I mean, I think he wants this to, be solved in the best way possible for everyone. He's certainly not looking to create any issues for any abutters. I just think it's really unfortunate because it's so much out of his control. He can't, compel someone else to forfeit a portion of their property. He only has control over his property rights that he can give. So he's really, his hands are tied. He could give fee to the abutter in that portion of the land so that there's enough there to make sure the right of way is, provides access to everyone. That's perfectly fine. He can grant an easement. He has the power to do that himself. He cannot dictate or compel other individuals to relinquish their property rights or, engage in a maintenance agreement or a road agreement or a road association. So that's the piece where I'm kind of coming from, where he's just has an application in front of the board to create a building, a commercial building for his business. And now he's being, really compelled to do something that's largely out of his control. So I'm trying to find a solution for him that will work, in minimizing his trouble here and his, the forfeiting of his property rights, but also he is very cognizant about his abutters and he's not interested in causing any issues. So that's the issue there. He's really most interested in taking the most simple route for him, but that also is, best suited for the abutters. So, it's difficult.
So what do you think, Rich?
I feel bad for Mr. Martin. But he does have a very simple solution to this problem. He can use Route 1. And then the road is what the road is. But he can use Route 1 and it won't impact anything. It will create a problem. If we don't fix this problem today, when somebody sells one of those inner lots, we're going to have to address it at that point, and we're going to be back here looking at it again.
But it's not Mr. Martin's problem.
It is not.
So, I mean.
But in my opinion, an easement is not the correct solution. I've talked with the codes enforcement officer and he says it's got to be a right of way. Tad says it should be a right of way. Even if it's a private way, it should be a right of way, not an easement.
So Amy, can your client use Route 1 and call it a day? Does he need to use the right of way?
Well, I think there's, my understanding just from viewing the property is there's trenching issues between, I mean, I think that would be another project. It's not like he has immediate access to Route 1. He has a certain driveway that goes to this DMR. And then between his lot and Route 1 is a lot of, from what I can see with plain eyes not being an engineer, there's a lot of drainage and there's, I think, a fire hydrant. And so it's not as simple as him being able to now just create an access to Route 1. I mean, that would be another project that would probably, quite frankly, require planning board approval. You know, I might be a little tongue in cheek there, but that it isn't just he has a driveway on Route 1.
But then he wouldn't have to deal with any of the questions about the right of way, the access, the abutters, the other people on the cul-de-sac. He could just,
yeah, I mean,
just do his thing.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, I think part of this application was creating this plan. So with that, you know, obviously shed light on this issue. So if it's a matter of my client getting access on Route 1, you know, I think that might be able to happen, but I'm not sure if that solves the issue.
But it's not your issue to solve.
Yeah.
If he has access to Route 1, then everybody else can deal with it down the road. And then he doesn't have to give anything. There's no issues with the butters. There's no easements. There's nothing. And the road remains the way it is until it becomes a problem for somebody else on the road, and that person brings it to the planning board.
I guess I can't speak directly to what that would entail. My instinct is that would be pretty cumbersome. So I don't know the answer to that.
Amy?
Okay, well, right now the right of way is pretty cumbersome.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Amy,
Yeah.
I think Gary has 270 feet of road frontage on Route 1.
I think you're correct. I don't think it's an issue of space, and I think he could probably meet the site distance. I just don't know enough about, I mean, I think there's probably a reason he went onto the private way to begin with. So
Because
I get
there's not a problem with site distance.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, or anything else. It's basically just turning around a culvert and getting a DOT road permit to come on.
I mean, then it takes the problem it takes ball out of your client's court altogether.
So I guess I would propose.
And they can continue to use the road because it's there.
Sure, and he does have an easement over it, quite frankly.
Right. So, and then it's somebody else's problem, and they'll bring it to the planning board.
And so I guess to that point is if Mr. Martin had and again, this is just, I haven't had this conversation with him, so I'll need to do that. But if Mr. Martin did have access on Route 1 and this same application came in front of the board, would we be having this conversation about the easement?
No.
We would
Okay.
not.
Okay. That's good for me to know. Yep.
And then the rest of it is left up to whoever's out on that road and has a compelling interest to make it conforming.
Okay.
And it has nothing to do with your client, although it's still there and he can still use it.
Sure. Okay.
But if it wasn't usable, he would have access to Route 1 and he wouldn't be impacted by whatever happens down the road to that road. Is that making sense?
I understand what you're saying. I guess if that's one option that I'm hearing, the other option, what I've heard, I just want to be able to speak to him about this, is that there would be essentially a collaborative effort to create 50 feet gifting or transferring land to a private, road association entity. Is that what I'm hearing, Tad?
I think it is.
Yes, it is. And I'm not sure. Boy, I'm speaking out of turn here, but I'm not sure that I feel comfortable burdening a property owner who hasn't created this problem, who has legal access to Route 1 if necessary, and is using basically a driveway. He doesn't need this road to meet any standard of the zoning ordinance. He's just using this as an alternative way of access, probably a safer access to his property.
Right.
So, if he were to convey this out to the right of way to the abutter in fee, he's done.
And
And
that would have been my next point.
He would be done. I
He
mean,
doesn't-
he has no dog in the fight. He's got an easement to go over this thing, whatever happens to it.
So right, I guess that was my first point, is he could just transfer in fee to the abutter, the small portion that goes over his property.
That's an interesting sound, whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm glad everyone else heard that sound. What was
By
it?
doing
So
that,
that's
Rich, it doesn't
trick.
solve the overall problem.
Doesn't solve the problem.
It's kicking the can down the road. Because somebody
But,
else, it's going to become an issue for somebody else.
And I'm not sure, and the board has to ask itself the question, is it this property owner's responsibility to solve a problem that is not of his making?
And he could
Or
easily just relinquish it.
He could relinquish it.
No,
And then
I mean, if, in my
The
opinion,
encroachment's on his land.
he
Right,
should use
right.
Route 1.
The irony.
If he can
Yeah.
use Route 1 and it's cost effective, he can always gift that to the abutter down the road if it ever becomes an issue. But he doesn't have to do it now, and he doesn't have to get everybody together. I agree with you. I don't think it's his responsibility to do that. But if he can get to his property from Route 1 and continue to use what's existing until it becomes an issue, why not do that?
Well, I guess to that point is I'm suspecting that creating an entrance to Route 1 will be cumbersome one way or the other. So my suggestion was, if he deeded the encroachment into the abutter, maintained the right of way, and then again, if, like, to your point, if it became an issue down the road, he would have access to Route 1 and he could solve it that way. But he wouldn't be creating issues for anyone else immediately. He would be relinquishing that amount so there's enough access. And then, again, like you said, if he needed to go to Route 1, he could, but it wouldn't be something that was contingent upon this application.
Correct.
Yes,
what
Amy,
Rich
but the
was-
other thing
but
is,
what- Go ahead, Marty.
the other thing is, if he does go on Route 1, okay, it's not his access part of the road maintenance agreement, if anything else that ever came up, for maintaining that part of the road because he's not using it.
Well, and I think he would maintain the right to use it because he is granted an easement historically. So he has access, regardless of whether he owns it, he'll have access. So if there was a road agreement, arguably he would want to, they would want contributions from him. My understanding is it's a pretty cordial arrangement right now, in the absence of an agreement. But yeah, he would have that access regardless of whether he relinquished the small portion to the abutter. So that would be preserved in any event, is my understanding.
Well, I think what Rich was originally raising is that for us to suggest, or, and I think even for your client, a solution by granting some sliver of your client's property to the abutter, it then automatically creates, leaves a problem for everyone else who's on the road, and we know about it. So in other words, we blessed a solution that potentially was a problem for everyone else who's on the road. So I think it would be worthwhile, and again, it's your client, so you do what you think is best, to address the question of how onerous would it be to create an access from Route 1 and leave the road the way it is and not gift anything, not raise the issue, or do anything with that, and so he can continue to use it. If he has a compelling reason why he wants the access, from that ancillary route, then, you can address it, and maybe you can do something collaborative with everybody else who's on the road. But as a board member, I would hate to bless a solution that's potentially a problem for everyone else who's on that road, knowing what I know now. Because it's fine for your client's abutter and your client, but it freezes everybody else out and they have to address the issue. And if those two that have access to Route 1 wanted to be persnickety and not let anybody use the road, they would be landlocked.
Well, no, because I mean, I guess I would just disagree slightly because everyone has access. There is an easement for everyone to have access on that road. I think what Tad was speaking to earlier was that if it's a non-conforming private way, maybe some lenders from a title perspective wouldn't like that and maybe cause some issues. But I think I think everyone has legal access because they've been granted that through deeds. So I don't think someone could circumvent that without, taking additional legal action. And so does my client included. There's access up to all the abutters. And so I think my client would continue to have that notwithstanding whatever happens, whether he started using Route 1, whether he deeded a portion of it, of his sliver in fee simple to the abutter. I think the issue isn't necessarily access as much as more of a title question from a lender's perspective. If the more, interior parcels wanted to sell or refinance and a bank had an issue with that.
Well, is it worthwhile discussing what we've been discussing tonight with your client? Because
Sure, I'm happy to. I mean, I think I guess I just want to be clear about what the options are. And I've heard if he just said I'm going to use Route 1, then this application would proceed. I've read in the notes, he could deed and fee to the abutter, and that could be an option. So I guess I just want to be clear about what the options are. And so I'm sorry to kind of go around the circle a little bit, but.
I didn't mean to beat a dead horse.
No.
You want to review the bidding for Amy? Just to go over it?
From my perspective, Amy, I think there are 3 possibilities here. One, he uses Route 1. Problem solved. Creates another problem, whether he can get a curb cut or anything, that's another option.
Mm-hmm.
He can do fee simple to Arundel Storage. That will solve his problem for where he's at. It doesn't solve the problem of anything that might happen in the future, but it does solve his problem. As long as that is a private road and a right-of-way, not an easement, then I don't think that, I don't want to kick the can down the road, but in reality, I don't want your client to have to suffer because other people did. At some point, the other folks on DMR Drive are going to come back to us and they're going to say, well, I want to do this. I want to expand. I want to move. I want to subdivide the lot. They're going to have a problem at that point, and it's going to be their problem.
Sure.
Your client shouldn't have to. He can go to them and he can say, hey, guys, this is the problem, and we're going to have, eventually somebody's going to have to fix it. But we either fix it all together right now, or I'm just going to deed my piece of land over to somebody else and do something, go out through Route 1.
I think one of those 2 options we could talk about and he could live with. So with that said, I guess I want to just see if the application could move forward, pending one of those 2 resolutions and making it contingent on that. Making any final approval contingent on that, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Rich. I don't think your client should carry the burden for whatever mistakes happened earlier on about who has access to the road, where the road meandered or whatever. I mean, I really don't think it's his responsibility, and I think he probably wants to move along, and I don't blame him. So anyway.
I'm not sure that is such a large issue to be dealt with that I'm not sure moving forward is a good idea. We can't have a public hearing. We don't know what the end result is going to be. We can't say, here, we'll do this if you do this or if you do something else.
Well, I think I can indicate that he would be willing to deed the sliver. I think he would be willing to transfer fee simple. And I had sent Tad a proposed easement deed weeks ago, and I think we would mimic that deed with at least the portion that the description of the land, and make it to the Arundel Storage abutter as opposed to the 3 abutters with the easement. So I think that would be our proposal in the, to kind of fulfill that option for the board.
What do you
Yeah,
think,
the
Dan?
language is already written, and you're actually, Leon's already done the survey. So,
Right. I mean, essentially, it's a very difficult kind of sliver to, I think, do meets and bounds for, but we have a plan that we can articulate and attach to a deed that helps illustrate it, right? Yep.
exactly.
And this,
I mean,
this
I'm fine
will-
with that as long as the other people on the road who currently have an easement don't end up landlocked.
They
And
would,
that they, okay, that's, because then the board is
correct.
subject, right, to,
No,
you know,
they're,
you did this and you landlocked us and now we're, you know, we have no way out.
right. I think it would be deeded, subject to the right of way. So the right of way already exists in the record. So it would be subject to that, I would acknowledge.
will that work, Ted?
Yep, works for me.
As for me,
Yeah,
Well, that seems to solve the problem. Very good. Let's see. Is there anything else?
Yeah, I talked to the chief today. Amy, you need to get that letter from him.
I
Okay.
have a letter. It was, I think it was emailed to you.
Well, the only thing, he called me and said he didn't have anything.
Well, it's funny because I had heard weeks ago that he had already sent it. And so when I got your staff notes, I was alarmed. And then I followed up with him today and he emailed both of us. It was like around 3, I think. And so I have the letter here and he does say that there is adequate water source.
Okay.
I think he copied both of us. So, and I apologize.
right.
I didn't realize you hadn't had it already.
No, I didn't. He called me up and said, "Where's the letter?" I said, why are you asking me?"
So I have the letter and it should be in your email.
Okay. I'll check on that. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Does the planning board want a peer review of the stormwater plan? It's kind of
Yes.
simple. You do? Okay. All right.
I think we should have peer reviews on almost everything that we do. Because I'm not an expert. I don't know.
That's a good idea, Rich.
It's a simple stormwater plan. Wouldn't take much time. You all right with that, Amy?
That's fine.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
yeah.
Get
I
her-
think Rich,
yeah, take a look at it.
that's right.
Okay. Walsh did the plan. So I'll get that squared away and get that out to, probably get to, let's see, get that out tomorrow. Okay? How does the board want to proceed from now?
Well, I think normally the next step would be, I want to say it would be a site walk, but I don't think we're going to get anywhere with that.
Why not? Oh.
So Amy, why don't you talk to your client first and find out which, no pun intended, route he wants to take?
Well, I have spoken to him. He has reviewed the staff notes that were provided earlier today, and he said if it takes deeding the fee simple, that's something I would do. I haven't talked to him about Route 1, so I expect at the very least, we can resolve it that way. So I guess I think a site walk would still be worthwhile.
How does the board want to accomplish that? Since the last site walk, I was the proxy.
How about a drone? Whatever happened with the drone?
What happened to the drone?
Yeah, did we ever get a review of the property via drone? The first
No,
time?
because the forest cover's too dense.
Oh.
Both above and under the canopy.
Right.
So I had to go alone. I slogged it alone and did the Nest plunge.
Well, we can do a group sidewalk after the May 1st, right?
15th.
No, May 1st.
Oh, is it May 1st now?
She hasn't changed. The governor has not changed the shelter in place order. It expires on April 30th.
So, well, we should see what happens with that, but I thought it was extended to May 15th, but
No, that's the emergency declaration, but it wasn't the shelter in place.
so Amy, you can video it and send us a video. Right now, we're not doing anything until the shelter in place order is lifted.
I mean, in lieu of a site walk, you would take a video?
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't you think, Ted?
I probably could go and do that.
He's our
I've done it for
videographer.
I mean, I'm
Just
fine
want-
either way. I mean, we can make however it needs to be accomplished. That's fine.
Tad just wants to get out of the office and I don't.
I can,
blame him.
I mean, Tad, I don't know if you're doing those alone or 6 feet
I'm
away.
doing them alone. Yeah,
Okay.
usually I do it alone, so that it ensures there's social distancing, and nobody wants to do it with me anyways. So yeah, I do it basically alone. I've done it for Rontu's Way, and I've done it for 17 Logging Road. Although I did have the owner with me on 17 Logging Road because that was a piece of land that was tough to orient yourself to where the boundaries were.
Okay, that's fine.
But this one's pretty simple.
So if you
I could
don't
do
mind,
it.
Tad, I vote for
If you
that.
do- Sure.
I vote for you
okay.
as the cameraman.
All right. I can do that.
We do that, the next town
Next week.
meeting, we can discuss, the next planning board meeting, we can discuss what Tad sees out there, if there's any corrections that need to be made. If not, we'll move forward with completeness and go to a public hearing.
Okay,
Sounds good to me.
that's fine.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Amy.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye now.
Night.
Next item, smart transportation. Major conditional use application, determination of completeness. Proposal to operate an approximately 32 vehicle livery transport business within the existing Arundel self-storage facility located at 2501 Portland Road, Tax Map 1, Lot 1F in the BI district. Improvements include construction of an 800 square foot office and a 6,800 square foot paved parking lot for the transport vehicles. The Blue Chip Core Group is the owner. John Smart of Smart Transportation is the applicant, and Kirk Butterfield is the applicant's agent. And I believe that is Mr. Butterfield up there where it says John Smart.
No, that's John Smart. Craig Church is actually my representative. Kirk was there while.
Oh, yeah, okay. I knew one of you had to be the representative.
Okay, so John isn't here?
John is here.
Yeah, I'm here.
That's what I
Is
thought.
Craig here? Isn't he? Seems to be signed in.
Craig's here.
Craig?
Well, there's John, yeah.
Yeah, but Craig has himself muted for some reason.
I'm here.
Okay, there you go.
Okay,
And Scott Striner, who is my landscape architect, and has
Right.
done a lot of work on this.
right. Okay.
I think there was one, can't find it, sheet of paper that I had. Tad is we have a discussion that we need to have concerning the shoreland overlay. Right now, the shoreland overlay has a 50-foot setback. And if at the parking lot, we enforce the 50-foot setback, the parking lot will end up in the shoreline, in the overlay. And John has said he's willing to create a 25-foot buffer between the end of the parking lot and that shoreland overlay. We can, in extreme circumstances, waive the requirement down to 25 feet. It's the buffer that he would be looking at. And I think in this case, if we don't, he's not going to be able to do the project because of where the conditions on the ground are in terms of what that parking lot corner looks like. Did I explain that properly, Ted?
Yeah, you did. And usually we weren't aware of the size of this. We first discovered it when we did our site walk, and then subsequent investigation on National Wetlands Inventory showed that we had a very sizable area here of wetland. There is a stream going through it, which has a 75-foot setback from the associated wetlands with that stream. In looking at that, at the wetlands, staff's made the determination that although the stream does have associated wetlands. These wetlands are also part of a larger wetland that was filled. Quite frankly, this area was filled. We see it across the street. We know this DMR area was filled. This is a larger wetland at one point. And so staff was interpreting it to be a shoreline overlay district. Yes, there's a stream for it, but these aren't wetlands that are necessarily associated with that stream. Yes, they feed each other, but they're not created by that stream. So therefore, it's a standalone wetland, and it's in excess of 2 acres, so it's a shoreline overlay. It's also a forested swamp, and therefore the setback, if you notice in the shoreline overlay district, is 50 feet from a forested swamp. And the planning board does have, in extreme circumstances, the ability to give a special exception for situations that are very unusual, where that setback can be reduced down to no less than 25 feet. And in doing a lot of research on this, we've determined that the wetlands that were filled back in the 80s, and there might have been some more filling in the 90s, but that occurred before the shoreline zoning regulations that we have were promulgated. Also, that the limits of the existing gravel fill in the proposed parking lot actually goes to the very edge of that wetland. And there's no intervening vegetational buffer between them. Stormwater currently just discharges right down from this filled, developed area into the wetland. And it's an unstable condition. You can see where the fence has been collapsing a little bit. That's probably also because of snow plowing, but the bank is unstable in its present condition. And the applicant's proposing, Scott's plan is to propose a 25-foot, essentially about a 25-foot wide level spreader that will intrude into the existing parking area and actually have a vegetative filter strip. So essentially that it will in fact stabilize the existing unprotected gravel bank. It'll correct the concentrated storm runoff that basically runs in rivulets and rills down the sides. It'll also provide a filtration of sedimentation and any pollutants by that vegetated strip. And it will, in general, mitigate the environmental impacts that have been occurring there for a long time. So the board's got a choice. If they choose to have the 50-foot setback, conditions continue the way they do right now. And if they proceed with this reduction in setback, and the applicant goes forward with this level spreader and this vegetative strip, it's actually going to be more beneficial for the wetlands than the existing conditions. It's extraordinary because this is filled land, and there's nothing but fill and then the wetland, and it's an existing condition. Nothing's going to improve it as it is right now. And given that, and given the remedial action the applicant's proposing, it's actually a better situation than if it were to remain as it is right now. So under those circumstances, the board would be justified to make a special exception to reduce that setback down that would enable this to proceed.
Any thoughts, guys?
I'm in favor of 25-foot.
Marty?
Yeah, I agree.
Susan?
Yes, I agree. I think we should do it.
Okay, I'm going to read a motion. The motion to grant a special exception to reduce the setback from the shoreland overlay wetland edge from the mandatory 50 feet to 25 feet due to the following extraordinary circumstances. A, that the wetlands on the lot were filled back in the 1980s before the shoreland zoning was effectively promulgated in Arundel. B, that the limits of existing gravel fill in the proposed parking area and surrounding pavements extend to the very edge of the SO wetland resource with no intervening vegetational buffer between stormwater runoff currently discharging in rivulets untreated down the unstabilized gravel bank into the wetland, causing bank erosion and sedimentation of the wetland area. C, the applicant is proposing to construct a 25-foot wide level spreader and vegetative filter strip between the proposed parking lot and the edge of the gravel bank that will, 1, stabilize the existing unprotected gravel bank, 2, correct concentrated stormwater discharge and reduce its velocity upon entry into the wetlands via the level spreader, 3, filter pollutants and sedimentation from parking lot runoff that currently discharge directly into the wetland ecosystem, and 4, generally significantly mitigate environmental impacts that have long impacted the SO wetland system. D, the reduction of wetland setback by 25 feet will create a mitigating setback from the resource where none exists today. That is the motion. I need somebody to make the motion to accept it, and we would need a second.
So I make it so read.
Okay, Marty has made a motion.
Second,
Yes.
it.
Roger has seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in, yeah, Marty, you gonna say something?
No,
Okay. Okay, hearing no discussion. Those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. That helps a lot.
The next,
Okay.
the next question,
I have a-
go ahead, Ted.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I said the next question is whether or not we forego the reading of the planner's findings of fact and make them, and motion to approve the applicant.
I move that we forego the reading of the findings of fact.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made and seconded to forego the reading of the findings of fact. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous. Now we need to move to approve the plenary site plan.
I move that we approve the plenary site plan as written.
I'll
Any
second that.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the plenary site plan. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
We will
John,
get-
we're gonna have to get a performance assurance for the work on the drainage work, okay?
Yes, I talked to my bank today. They're going to set up an escrow. The estimated work is $7,500.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
So
And
do you
we're gonna have,
plus 10%? Or,
yeah, plus 10%, please.
okay.
8250.
I'll have that to you within a couple days.
Okay, and I have Scott, I want Scott to inspect the work that's done on that level spreader and the landscaping, okay? That's gonna be required for your CEO.
Very
He's the
good.
design, okay?
So I got to ask a question similar to what the other guy was talking about. So for me to proceed, not with the building of the putting the building in there, but to get going on this, I need to put soil erosion controls and have
Yep.
you come inspect those soil erosion controls before they start anything.
Right. And also, where you stand on your DEP permit? It's subject to the DEP permit being granted. I know it's a PBR,
Yeah,
but
Yeah, it was. I believe it's 30 days, and I believe 30 days is tomorrow.
No, it's 2 weeks. It's 14 days.
Oh, is it?
yeah, I was gonna
14
say.
days, and we're about seven or eight into it right now. So we're almost. I'll double check the date on that.
Yeah, would you? Yeah, we need that. And basically, it's a PBR. So unless DEP says something, and they're not saying anything, they're not even answering the phone. Unless that happens, you automatically get the permit.
I
But we-
submitted on the 9th. We're actually 2 weeks today.
You're at the 2 weeks now.
Yeah, two weeks today.
You haven't heard anything.
No, I reached out to Alexis. She had it in hand, did a quick look at it, didn't have any questions, and I haven't heard anything since. So
You got it.
no comments. So it looks like we're good.
Yeah,
So
good. Okay.
just so the erosion control measures, you come inspect it, Tad, and we are good to start that piece of it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. And I need the bond and the
Yes.
performance. What are you going to use? A letter of credit?
Whatever you want me to do. I mean, the bank was going to set up an escrow account.
Fine. We could do an escrow account. We'll do it basically a tri-party agreement where they can't release it until I approve it.
Yep.
So I do inspection and then I sign a form and then they release the money. We could do it that way, or you just give us the money. It sounds like your bank will probably want to hang on to that cash, so we'll probably do a
I mean,
tri-party.
it's such a small amount. Honestly, it's not a.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever you feel is the best way to do it is fine.
Okay. All right.
We'll
All right.
talk offline if you want to do
All
another.
right. We'll talk about it tomorrow, Monday. Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Thank
Okay.
you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next item, Old Logging Road Timber Harvest, major conditional use application, a determination of completeness. A proposal to clear cut between 4 and 5 acres of existing forest land for the purpose of creating pasture for equestrian uses on a 7.09 acre parcel located at 17 Old Logging Road, tax map 27, lot 17F in the R1 district. I'm not going to try to butcher your name, Miss Noyes.
Rakaya.
Rakaya, thank you.
You're welcome.
And David Gosberg are the owners and applicants.
Yes.
And Tad's going to give us a report on the site walk that he did.
Yeah, you have the report, and what happened is I went out and took a look with David. We walked around. I took the Nestea plunge at one point, and for those of you who are of a younger generation, that means I fell into the water. The thing that we found there is that we have a lot of the soils are very saturated. The property is at the bottom of, it's actually the toe of an esker that runs along basically Limerick Road. And it's really the beginning of drainage that's going towards Duck Brook. Soil survey maps show that it's Naumburg soils, which are traditionally hydric. They aren't always hydric, but they in many cases are hydric. Meaning they're wetland soils. We went down there and found that it's a very hummocky piece of land. There's areas that are upland, and there's areas that are certainly not upland. And it's a mixed bag. And what I did is I went in and started looking through the performance standards that the shoreline zoning regulations have for both timber harvesting and also agriculture. And what the applicant wants to do is the applicant wants to basically clear cut areas that they can clear cut in order to provide pasture land for their horses. And I was hoping we would find a nice big broad area where that wouldn't be a problem, but it's hummocky. We have high points in some places, low points in other places. And it was very difficult to make a determination of where the uplands were versus where the wetlands were, and how much in terms of acreage there was, both contiguous and non-contiguous in there. And quite frankly, I would not know how to advise the planning board or the applicant where those areas that are non-wetland necessarily are, and where those areas of wetland that may qualify as shoreline overlay district would be. It's all forested wetland, from what I could see. Nothing unusual. There's sphagnum moss in some places, but it's a forested swamp, basically. It's a pedestrian forest cover swamp. And as such, it's very difficult for me to tell the board where exactly those boundaries are. I gave you some photographs in that report that I gave, and it was very hard to give you a good idea of it. It's very dense, very tough land. The applicants and I talked about whether if we cut it, would that dry it out? In some places that might, but in general, what happens when you cut the timber off that, especially hemlocks. It's dominated by hemlocks. There's some mixed hardwoods in there. There's some facultative hardwoods that are facultative wet hardwoods that are associated with wetlands, red maple primarily. That cutting the trees may not do anything but exacerbate the water level, because the water will rise. There won't be the trees there to suck up the water, if you will. So the areas that are very heavily buttressed are pretty evident, but it's not something that I can give you a clear indication of where the wetland boundaries are.
I did talk to Oliver Markwitz, the York County Forester.
Yeah.
And he said that all I need to do is get an FON, which is the forest operation notification, have me sign it, have the forest or the logging people sign it. I was either going to go through Bolio or Libby, and then send it back to them, because they didn't have any concerns of water or shoreland or anything like that.
That's because they don't do the shoreland zoning we do.
Okay.
That's a DEP mandated thing that we're required to do.
Okay. But they both have foresters who work for them that could, maneuver around those areas.
Well, it sounds like Oliver and I should have a talk, I guess. Because there might be a jurisdictional issue here. You do have an option of getting a forester to work to identify how to deal with the wetlands, but the planning board does have the authority, or is given the authority, is actually mandated the authority by DEP to administer its shoreland zoning regulations. And the shoreland overlay district, which you just saw in the last application, is triggered by 2 acres of contiguous wetlands. And the issue on your property is where is it contiguous? Is there 2 acres? We know there's a huge amount of wetlands off to the west of your property line, and we were getting into some of that messiness there. But for the planning for the planning board's purposes, they need to know where those wetlands are, because there's the state performance standards in a shoreland zone require a minimum of 25-foot setback.
Okay.
More depending on the type of wetland. I think in most cases it's going to be a 25-foot setback for both harvesting and for also creating agricultural lands, including grazing land. I think I mentioned that in the report that I sent you folks. So that's why we need to find out exactly where that is. So if you want Oliver and I to get together to discuss this, we certainly can. But at some point, we're going to have to make a determination of where those wetland boundaries are.
Okay. There is a forester who works with Bolio, who he pointed me to. It was Jones Association. I can go through them too. But I just wasn't sure what route I need to be going in order to do this.
Right. I think the planning board would take the position that we just need to find out how much where the wetlands are and how much it is, and whether, if the wetlands are not contiguous in accordance with shoreland zoning, then we don't have anything to do with it anymore.
Okay.
Okay. That's, I think I had mentioned that in our walk, that, I was trying to find a way that we could do it. And the issue is whether or not we have that 2 acre wetland trigger anywhere on that property that would make it so that this planning board has authority. Otherwise, then the only issue, if the wetlands come off the plate and there isn't a shoreland zone that the planning board regulates, then the issue is just clear cutting for agricultural purposes, for creating pasture.
Okay.
And I guess that's one thing the board can discuss right now, if they how they feel about that particular issue, especially considering that one of the objectives of the town has been historically to try to reactivate agriculture and animal husbandry, and to encourage it wherever possible. So whenever we do that, in existing forest stands. Removal of trees is going to be essential for creating grazing land. And the planning board hasn't really addressed that issue in the past. Since you do regulate timber harvesting over 40% basal area removal, question for the planning board is, you can approve up to a full clear cut. Would not agricultural, or I should say grazing land or agricultural land, clearing for those purposes, would that be a justifiable reason for cutting in the excess of 40%?
If you're turning it into agricultural property, that's worthwhile.
Well, you'd have to look at it and say, do we consider it, I don't consider it agricultural, but I do consider it characteristic of what people want Arundel to look like.
Okay, so
Because when I think of agriculture, I'm sorry, I think of crops growing someplace, not animal husbandry.
Well, that's kind of the goal eventually, but we're just doing this to get the ball rolling to bring horses home. And then once that happens, then we'll work on the other pieces, but I'm not there yet. I'm just trying to get one step at a time.
Well, I don't really have a problem with it if, because you're going to be moving horses onto it, it's not like you're going to cut it down and turn it into a bocce court.
No.
Although if you do, let me know and I'll come and throw those funny little balls around.
Perfect.
I would not have a problem. My concern would be more from a point for Tad. The 2-acre contiguous water source doesn't stop on their property.
No.
So if it runs, if they've got a 3/4 of an acre on their property and the guy next to them has the other 1.5 acres, then they're going to have that problem.
Yeah, then that wetland, the wetlands don't respect property boundaries. That's the issue. But
Okay.
the issue of contiguous is an important distinction. You remember we used that in the Bracy subdivision.
Yep.
Where contiguous mattered a lot, because contiguous is a distinct measurement which eliminates threads, if you will, because you can create 100-acre contiguous wetland by a wetland that's 5 feet wide that runs for 10 miles. That's not what this shoreline zoning was intended to protect. It's 100 by 100 foot. If anywhere there's a break there, that's a break in contiguous.
So, Tad, if you recall when you were walking the property, the vast majority of the apparent waters were in paths. They were fingered.
Yeah,
they weren't. It wasn't like you walk back there and there's a clearly defined line between what is swamp and what is not. There's little streams running through in 4 or 5 different places, and they all drain towards the southwest.
Right. Yeah, they do. And the issue there is, it's not just, I'm not as concerned about the surface rivulets. Those are a really good indicator, David, as we were talking about. I mean, that shows that, yeah, we have it. It's going to be determined more by just grabbing an auger and looking at the soils, because the real determinant here is the hydric soils. The Army Corps requires you to use the vegetation and the morphology or the hydrology of the area, but really the soils are the real prime determinant. And I mentioned Naumburg soils there, which our investigation, after the site walk showed, Naumburgs can be hydric and they can be non-hydric. It all depends on where the water is in there and how it affects it chemically. And that's really done by just walking around and taking an auger and taking a look at where these boundary lines are. And if we've got breaks of less than 100 feet, then that's gonna break off that wetland as not being contiguous. But that's where I think maybe going out with Oliver or you were mentioning Jones. What was Jones' first name? Do you know?
I think it was Rick Jones through Jones Associates, I believe.
Yep.
But the forester that Bolio uses.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, maybe I think it would be good for both of us to get out there and at least have a conversation about this.
Okay.
Okay, so well,
Okay.
correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ted, but I think for the purposes of this meeting, which is to determine completeness of the application, we have the information that we need. We could use a little bit more. We could use a discussion with the forester or with a wetland specialist to let us know if there's contiguous, if there's a contiguous piece of water out there that we need to be concerned about. But other than that, the application is complete, correct?
That would be true. The only thing that changes, that would change the change things would be is if we have shoreland overlay district wetlands out there. I certainly don't have resource protection, and I don't have stream protection because I don't have any streams out there. The only stream I've got is Duck Brook, and that's way off this property.
Yeah.
So I have no streams recognized out there. So the issue is 2 acres or more of wetlands, and if we have 2 acres or more of contiguous wetlands, then we've got a shoreline overlay district, and that is something that you can't do agriculture in, and you have to stay 25 feet away from it. And that's what we don't really have a clear idea of yet.
Okay. So I just need to talk to the forester and have the forester talk to you, basically, is what.
Yeah, well, if he wants to go out and take a walk around, I'd be willing to do that again. This time I'll wear hip waders.
Okay.
Okay, and you think you can get that done when?
I don't know. I'll leave it to Rakai on that.
Yeah, I don't know when. I mean, I don't think that they're moving around. State employees aren't. I know the soil guy was not. But Jones Associates may, because they're their own entity. I don't know.
They're private.
Yeah.
Then I think at this point, we're not going to make a determination of completeness, because if we do, it starts the clock ticking. And we're at that point, we'd be looking at it saying, if we determine that it is complete in 2 weeks, we're going to have a public hearing. And at that point, we'd have 30 days in which to make a decision. And that may not be in your best interest. Because if we don't know the answer to that question, we'd end up having to vote no.
Okay. Yeah, I'll see what they say. I have sent an email to Rick Jones, and and Oliver also, wanted to touch base with Tad. So
yeah, I think that's good. Okay, well, as soon as why don't you have him give me a call or let me know when he's available, and same thing with Oliver, and we'll go from there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, you're up.
Okay.
Rontu's Run Dog Daycare, major conditional use application, determination of completeness. A proposal to establish a pet daycare center in an existing riding stable located at 496 Limerick Road, tax map 27, lot 2 in the R1 district. Kristen Woodard is the owner applicant. So this isn't in the garage. This is in the old the barn.
No, same in the garage where it's been the whole time.
Oh, because it says in an existing riding stable, and I didn't think that was a riding stable.
No, it's not. But that's the way it's read ever since the beginning. So I think that's the way it's been worded.
It may have, in all honesty, and it just never registered that it said riding stable. And I'm thinking to myself, there's a lot of things you could say about that, but I don't think you'd want a horse in there. At any rate.
Mr. Chairman, the object was that that's what the use was at that time, was a riding stable.
Oh, okay. So does the board have any questions for the applicant? Better yet, are we missing anything that we need for the determination of completeness?
Last Friday, I conducted the site walk on behalf of the board. Kristen was kind enough to let me in. I took a photographic record. You have that document in front of you. It showed she's actually installed or put the cages and many of the components up. They're not complete, of course, because she's not going to put any more investment in until such time that the board would be to give an approval or rule on this. However, it did give the board more of an understanding of how that facility worked. The cages were put in place. The floor was shown. The applicant had put in a acclimation pen for new arrivals or for those dogs that were nervous about being with the pack. The applicant also took out that monitor stove that had been in the corner, and the applicant intends to put in mini splits. That was in the first application. There was a lot of the interior space, play area or exercise room had materials in it because that's still being used for storage. And it's my understanding the applicant indicated to me that she was not going to make any improvements there until such time that the board, of course, gave her approval. But you got to see the size of that, the relationship between the spaces, and I'm trying to think of what else. Oh yes. So I hope that the photographs we took and the narration that we took was sufficient to provide an adequate view of the facility and how various things worked. Does the board have any other questions that were not revealed by the photographs, the photographic essay?
I do not. Or at least I can say I won't right now. I have to take a look at the picture again.
Okay. And also, Kristen made a submission also of the letter from Casala.
I saw that, yeah.
And today she also submitted additional materials in support of the cages. And frankly, I haven't had time to read them yet. I'm sure the board hasn't either. I forwarded them, Kristen, I copied them in a PDF and sent them to the board, but they probably didn't have any chance to really take a look at them yet.
I looked at it. It looks as if you're getting the cages from Amazon.
I've got them from various different places. I've got some from Petco, PetSmart, Chewy.
But the reviews were ones that were posted on Amazon.
On Amazon.
Is that right?
The things that I just gave to Tad.
Right.
Yeah.
The reviews in support of the cages were from
Yeah,
Amazon.
they were from different, one of them was from Guide Dogs of America, Pups Best. Midwest Life Stages, various different ones, because I wanted to have a few different opinions.
Mostly for training your individual dog, though, correct? I went on and looked at all the reviews.
Yep.
So it's primarily to use when you bring your puppy home or the, the owner, dog owner to use in their home, but not in a commercial application.
Well, I don't think
I looked at all the reviews. None of them were for commercial applications.
Well, no, it doesn't differentiate. It doesn't say one way or the other. I just wanted something to say, give organizations or people's opinions on one versus the other. I don't think there's anything bad for either. But that was my meaning is, I mean, you seem to think that wire crates are unacceptable. You know?
No, I don't think they're unacceptable. I think I have my own opinions about them in a commercial application, but I don't think they're unacceptable. So,
how is it commercial or in home? What is the difference when that's what the dog is going to be in? In fact, the dog is going to be in that crate less in a daycare than they are if they're at home while their owner is at work.
Because you have multiple dogs that don't live as a pack during their daily lives, and they're coming to a commercial establishment where you have random, or generally random daycare dogs. And so the issues that arise in that situation are very different than, normally arise in a situation in a home. But I'm not saying that I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying the reviews that you chose were from Amazon, from commercial sites, but they were primarily to describe how to use the wire crates in a home situation and not in a commercial one.
Okay,
So,
well, to address that, and I took some things, I don't know if you had a chance to look at what all of you have been using for, the ordinances and whatnot. I went through there, and one of the things that you said at the last meeting was that the pan should be below the wire. Do you recall saying that?
yeah, well, I said I didn't know how you were going to address cleaning waste that's in the pan if the dog is standing or lying in the pan in its own waste. So you have to take the dog out of its crate. You have to pull the pan out. You don't have potable, you don't have water. And then you have to put the dog who's dirty someplace else. And then you have to go out and you have to clean the pan. So just logically, and I did look at all the crates, and some of them are under and some of them are over. Some of them recommend you put blankets on top so that they're not lying on a crate. It's problematic, but that's just my own personal opinion, and I'm just making a point of reference, that's all.
Okay. Well, I just want to read to you in the standards of care in animal shelters, okay, which is, again, what all of you have been using for rules. On page 7, under unacceptable, wire mesh bottoms or slatted floors that are used for cats and dogs. Okay, unacceptable that the mesh is above the pan. Okay, that's right in here in what you have been using. And you don't like what I have, okay? I know that. You don't
It's
like
true.
what I have.
And I think I've made that abundantly clear.
You have
but
made it abundantly clear, okay?
So-
You have. But I have had people speak on my behalf, letters on my behalf, veterinarians, whatever.
Right, you had a horse vet that doesn't take care of dogs and didn't take care of your dogs and didn't have any opinion at the meeting. But I don't want to argue this with you. I think we're
Yes,
here
you
to
do.
decide.
That's
But I
all
don't.
you do is argue it with me.
I think we are here to decide whether or not your application is complete. Is that right, Rich?
That is correct. That is
Okay.
the purpose of this meeting. It's not to debate whether the cages have wire mesh or slatted mesh or carpeted bottoms. None of that is important. The question before us today is, do we have enough information? Have we been presented with enough that we can say we have all of the information that we need to have in order to move forward? Whether we like the information, we dislike the information, for the purposes of this meeting is completely irrelevant.
Agreed.
We will, if we have all of the information that we need, we will then move forward to having a public hearing and making a decision after that public hearing.
I'm with that.
Well, Rich, do you see anything missing?
I did not. I saw some things in here that I thought were questionable, but there's nothing in here
Prevents us from.
that
calling
prevents us
application.
from moving forward. The pictures that Tad took from the inside, I commend you, Kristen. The inside of the facility looks a lot better than the day we went on a site walk as a
Well, it
group.
looks great, absolutely.
Thank you. Nice to hear something positive. It helps.
It looked really well.
Thank you.
Tad, welcome back.
Hi. I was here the whole time. I just didn't want to keep putting on a show.
Oh, no, it looked as if you had logged off and gone away.
No. Oh, I thought I froze my picture like John Smart did.
Oh, no, it went black and you disappeared out of the frame completely. So do we have everything we need to make a decision?
I can't think of anything else that you need at this point now.
Then it comes down to a discussion among the board. Do we have what we need? Is there anything else that you would like?
I think the application is complete and then make a motion that we accept it as being complete.
Is there a second?
Yep.
Motion has been made and seconded to deem the application complete. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
It is unanimous.
Okay.
We
right.
can schedule a public hearing for
May 14th.
May 14th.
That's
Yeah,
the
that's right.
next
Three
meeting.
weeks from now.
Yay, a little break. I will do the notification to the paper
Okay.
and schedule for the 14th. And that will be the only public hearing we've got scheduled for that day.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
So if you could, Kristen, thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you
We
know if
will
we'll
look-
still be doing the Zoom meetings or
At that point, probably.
Okay.
A lot of it depends upon the governor. As long as the shelter in place exists, we're going to do Zoom meetings.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
See, we have a problem. We have a real problem. We may do it even without the shelter in place, Kristen, only because right now we don't have a home. We have no place to meet.
Right.
Well, there's a roof on the,
Right. Yeah, okay.
So
there's a roof on a new town hall.
yeah, but there's nothing else in there. And the CEO who I've met occasionally has indicated that nobody will be occupying it until it gets its CO. So yeah, we don't want to be in violation of the town zoning ordinance by going in there and occupying it prior to it.
Yes,
receiving
it would for the zoning board to violate the zoning ordinance would not be cool.
Well, there's no electricity either, so well there is, but it's not powered in yet. So
You know, if we have to meet this way, then we'll meet this way.
yeah, I'm
Who
afraid.
knows? Maybe at that point the school will open back up. Although I'm not going to hold my breath.
Now the schools the schools have all pretty much. I mean, I have my stepdaughter teaches at one school and has friends in others, and all administrations pretty much said we're going to be remote for the rest of the school year.
Yeah. We'll see what
People are
happens.
canceling. So whether the school allows us back in after this, I really don't think they will. So
Yeah.
we're on
Yeah.
our own.
Well, that's okay. This works.
Homework. Okay.
Again, thank you much, Kristen.
Thank you.
Listen.
Gentlemen, Tad, can you send me the findings of fact? And I will get them circulated around so we can get the signatures on them.
Yep. I will do so. Probably not till Monday.
Yeah, that'll be fine. We get it done sometime next week. Not a problem.
Okay. And you're going to find out, you're going to let me know about DocuSign for, you know, the thing that's interesting is that it sounds like York County Registry of Deeds is accepting paper copies, because that's actually what I gave. After going through all that with Elizabeth's Way and all those machinations with that, it ended up they accepted the paper copies.
But even with the paper copy, we can't make a PDF out of something that size.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure about that. I think you can blow it up.
You can go to copy it and they can do it.
Yeah.
Well, then we
Well,
just
yeah,
tell the applicant to bring us a
Right,
PDF of
to
the
go to
Mylar.
copy it and they can send it to us as a PDF and we can sign it on the PDF
Yep.
Right.
with Adobe.
Yep.
So,
Well, no, you'll get it through DocuSign with a tag that says this is where you're supposed to sign it. And once
Oh.
everybody has signed it, it gets returned.
so yeah, a copy it can take any architectural large scale drawings and create PDFs.
Cool.
They're
Yeah.
right on Route 1.
In Kennebunk.
Past the connector.
Okay.
Towards the Dairy Queen in
Oh,
Biddeford.
yeah, I know what you mean. Right across from the recycled station.
Right near Genest.
Yep.
Just beyond Genest, across the street.
Oh, cool. We'll have to
Mhm.
look at that.
Yeah, they're really nice people too.
Like I say, yeah, I think if we tell the applicant, you need to get it to us in a paper format so that we can get it signed, that'll work.
Yeah, they do it all the time.
Okay, good to
Yeah.
know. Anything else, Dad?
I have nothing else at this time now.
The Board of Selectmen want to have a discussion with the town planner and I about the citizens petition change that we're making to the ordinance. They want to talk to us about it on Monday night. Okay.
Are they doing a Zoom meeting too?
No, they do
do
teleconference.
call.
They're all
They-
conference
they-
calls.
I think the Zoom works pretty well, actually, for our purposes.
For us, yeah, it works well.
Yeah.
I'm glad, because I can't see any of you.
Really?
We can see you.
I know, that's why I think it's grossly unfair.
Well, the problem is that you're using fruit.
I'm using fruit.
Aren't you using an apple?
I'm using a Spectre.
Oh, that's even worse.
Oh, yeah. I'm using Spectrum. That's the problem. Spectrum and Hollis, not exactly, they don't go well together.
Well, Marty has come in loud and clear. You go, Marty.
Yeah.
Well, my son finally found a speaker external. That's how I happened to get on tonight.
Excellent.
Excellent. Well, see,
Gentlemen,
Marty,
meeting-
listen on.
So should I move that we adjourn?
I'll second that.